The holiday period has started. Merry Christmas, everyone. Unfortunately, that means that Blizzard is out of office though, and we won't be getting any patches for 3 weeks. So I would say that this point marks the end of the first third of beta. We've had beta keys for 5 weeks now, and there are another 9 weeks till expansion release. And I think the expansion is coming along. A lot of things are actually looking promising, but they also still have a lot of work to do on some aspects. In this video, I will summarize everything that has happened in the beta up to this point. And I will start with the UI add-on situation, which has been very controversial. I think the Blizzard inbuilt UI elements are very basic at the moment and lack a lot of functionality, but add-ons actually have a lot of freedom and can make up for that. The cooldown manager is selectively functional. There are a lot of spells that are not trackable, like as an enhancement shaman I cannot track Earth Ellie, or as a druid I cannot track Heart of the Wild. There are also spells where this activation overlay for dot duration overwrites a spell's cooldown. So for example, you cannot see the cooldown of Barb Shot. Add-ons actually can track cooldowns by spell ID, but I'm not sure to what extent, so I hope they fix it in the base UI soon. The raid frames are very similar to the previous default raid frames. They made the default dispel indicator have a gradient, they changed the heal absorb texture, and they added a feature that puts defensive cooldowns on someone's raid frame. This is a bit big and it is still missing a lot of defensives, but it is a good start. Of course, there will be no feature to filter buffs or debuffs, and no feature for specific placement of buffs or debuffs, but other visual customization of raid frames in add-ons will be open. Now for the damage meter, you might have seen my video criticizing it at the start of beta. They did actually release a post that seemed like it was in response to my video, in which they outlined their plans for the future of the meter. They didn't really add many things yet though. They did spend a lot of time working out the segments. We had a long period where the damage meter showed everyone's damage as 0 on a boss. That has since been fixed. The meter still doesn't reset when you enter a new dungeon though. Here is a list of my requests in the video, and they are color coded by if they responded or have fixed it yet, or if an add-on fixes it. There is still a long way for them to go, but they have shown intention, so I am hopeful. There is also the audio assist feature that has been made for accessibility, but it is actually handy because there is a function that plays CTS when you are targeted by something. Right now it can only say 3 things, and I'm not sure if add-ons can interact with it. Here is an example.
Targeted by light rod. Targeted by light rod.
Now I want to dispel some rumors and talk about add-ons. There are a lot of functions in Midnight that are achievable with add-ons, and there is a lot of misinformation on what is and what is not achievable. And it is very apparent because this Wowhead post was released just this week about Blizzard loosening add-on restrictions, and a lot of the contents of this post were actually announced in the WoW UI dev Discord a whole month before. So to reiterate Blizzard's goal, they never actually wanted to remove add-ons or restrict appearance altering add-ons. They just wanted to dial back on computational functions. The big issue is that the weak or as dev made their own decision to stop development, so we are kinda sitting here waiting for new add-on devs to catch up, but there are some good add-ons I've seen in development. I'll spotlight my favorite add-on as Arc UI. This add-on allows you to fully customize the cooldown manager, move the positions of individual icons, change individual aspects about every icon such as a different glow color, and also make any buff with stacks into a bar or any buff with duration into a duration bar. For nameplates, Plato is returning and already has a beta version where you can import your live profile. Obviously not every script will work, but majority of the relevant things that Plato is used for will be retained. Most notably, colored nameplates are possible based on mob level, elite status, and casting status, which are aspects of NPCs that are surprisingly very well maintained by Blizzard. Platinator is also a new nameplate add-on that in my opinion has a very easy customization UI. Unhalted unit frames is a good add-on for unit frames and boss frames, and I've also found good use for it as a cast bar add-on until the dedicated cast bar add-ons get updated. Now for the damage meter, Details has said they are likely continuing development as a modification add-on to the Blizzard damage meter. In the meantime, there is a minor add-on called damage meter formatting, which groups damage done and DPS together and also adds percentages to the breakdown. M+ timers are still functional, with Relo's M+ timer and Warp Deplete still working as normal. There is currently a rudimentary spellcast tracker for streamers. It is called Spell History, and there is a rudimentary combat timer called Combat Time Tracker. Now Bigwigs is functional, but it goes off of Blizzard's boss mods, so there is no options for filtering or anything. But it is possible to, for example, show text in the middle of the screen saying something is in 5 seconds. For raid frame customization, there is an add-on called Dander's Frames. Cell is also most likely continuing development, although it hasn't been updated yet. And a very popular add-on for beta is Neph UI. This is designed as an LVUI similar add-on which allows you to reskin almost every aspect of the UI. And speaking of LVUI, they did back off on their previous stance and they have confirmed they are likely continuing development for Midnight, but it is not ready yet. The only types of add-ons that are likely going away completely is OmniCD and Hikili. Now to talk about the class reworks, majority of classes have had aspects simplified and this has been controversial. A lot of people are scared the game will become too easy and boring. I have played about 25 specs and my opinion is that it's about a 50-50 split. 50% of classes have had their rotation streamlined to a point where it feels clean and a lot of unnecessary procs have been removed. The other 50% of classes had a bit too much removed and are either uninteresting or simply feel incomplete. I made a bit of a fun tier list based on how enjoyable I found classes. This is not a damage tier list, but take this with a grain of salt. Do not be mad at me. Some of the classes I played here, like 2 keys on total. Overall, I am actually really enjoying healing, DPS a bit less so, and I haven't really done much tanking. The new spec, Devourer Demon Hunter, has an interesting playstyle, but has had big complaints about a lack of qual. Because the spec is very rampy, it will typically do tank damage on the first pull of a dungeon. It has no real cooldown, so the rotation is maybe a bit non-variant. And there are some hostile features, such as cancelling a Castle Collapsing Star can delete about 15 seconds worth of resources. Also, to talk about balancing, for the first month of beta we had some really OP classes like Frost Mage and BM Hunter. These have since been nerfed. Currently Unholy DK is super OP and some other specs like Arcane Mage are close. It does look quite grim for some specs like Windwalker though. For tanks, VDH has been looking really OP the whole beta. Prop Pally recently did get buffed so that it can actually live and it's doing a bit too much damage. And for healers, Resto Druid has been looking like the best healer the whole beta, even after several nerfs. But I wouldn't be worried about balancing too much right now. Also, because this is an enhancement shaman channel, I will give a brief word. I think Enhanced is enjoyable and fun, probably one of the most complete DPS specs. Totemic is looking a bit better at the moment. I think there are some issues, like the bottom of the tree is very limiting for Stormbringer, and also the Shaman class tree is atrocious and Shaman has very poor defensives and utility. For the dungeons, we have now tested all 8, and my impression of the pool is that there are no dungeons that are like super hard like Priority is. For the most part, enemy casters are a lot less plentiful and they are casting less frequently. There are a few more casters in the newer dungeons though than the older dungeons. For the spells, this dungeon pool seems to favor Curse and Poison dispels. There is one disease dispel, but it's not too relevant. Now, I won't go too in depth on everything that is in these dungeons. Maybe I will do that later. I will say that the most interesting dungeon is Magus' Terrace, where everyone in the group gets a 10% haste buff at the start of the dungeon, and if you ever die, it is catastrophic because you lose this buff. There's also a stacking damage buff that you get from killing these big packs of mana worms or interacting with crystals that are spread throughout the dungeon, and using these crystals to refresh the buff may be a strategy. But if the dungeon is tuned in a way that we have to play around these things, it could end up being pretty punishing. Now, I put out a video on the raid a few weeks ago and not much has changed since then, so if you want to know about the raid, go watch that video. I was critical in my video about how hard the first 3 bosses were. They did end up making them easier and retesting them. On the first boss, instead of 10 dispels that must be dispelled in a 5-5 split, it is now 6 dispels that need to be dispelled in a 2-2 split, meaning you can fail 2 dispels every set. The boss is definitely lenient like a first boss should be now. Voracious, I think, still felt a bit annoying. They did add an extra worm so you can fail 1 worm per set, but the area denial still felt a bit frustrating. And on Salhadar, they improved the visual for the kick adds and gave more time to the mechanic. This boss felt pretty good on retesting. Now last week there was a change to the vault where the M+ vault is further improved upon doing 12s, 15s or 18s. I did express that I think this is a good change as it brings parity between the M+ vault and raid vault, allowing high-end M+ players to not be as behind as they were in Season 3 War Within. I did some research and found that if the balance of key levels is anything like in War Within, it is unlikely that most people will be doing an 18 at the start of the season, or even anyone at all. The previously data mined crest system with ramping upgrade costs has still yet to be confirmed. We can't actually test upgrading items or anything on beta. I do expect it to change though because the costs were a bit absurd. Now I did put out a video on consumables last week, and in this video I showed the wrong slide when talking about the damage pot, which is very OP. I think in the beta you are seeing burst specs a bit overrepresented right now, and there's a huge disparity between people who are using pots versus people who are not using pots, because a pot is a 70% damage camp at the moment, so ray testing damage results are to be viewed at your discretion. There is a sheet summarizing the damage people did in ray testing, but it is a bit polluted. A lot of people are using an embellishment exploit, and a lot of raiders just weren't using proper pots, so it's hard to gauge what was actually doing well. Also, Unholy DK was completely overpoweredly broken for the last 3 bosses that were tested. Now, Prepatch was announced to be coming in a month on January 20. I'm not actually sure what is coming in Prepatch. Some class changes have been scheduled to not go live until midnight, but I believe we will have new talent trees in Prepatch. Tier sets have been confirmed to be completely simplified to be 10% damage or healing to accommodate for classes who would not have had functional tier sets because of the removal of abilities. I think the whole add-on situation is probably mostly under control from Blizzard's end for Prepatch. The issue is that a lot of add-ons will probably not be fully ready for this Prepatch, so some people might have incomplete UIs at least until the start of midnight. So the question of will midnight be ready is that I think it can be ready. I think it kind of depends on what Blizzard do in the few weeks after they get back from holidays. I think a lot of classes need 1 or 2 extra things. I don't think they are done with making big changes to talents. Normally at some point they enter a tuning stage where they only change numbers, but I don't believe they are at this point yet. For reference, the big Shaman rework in War Within came 56 days before release, and 56 days before midnight would be January 5, and funny coincidence, that is the day that Blizzard will start updating beta again. The current testing period is scheduled to run until January 5, and this usually indicates that they will release a patch on that day.